President Trump's erratic tariff war has wiped away billions of dollars from Americans' retirement accounts, which explains why a majority of Americans are worried about their personal finances, unemployment, and inflation. Ignoring those concerns, congressional Republicans are moving full steam ahead with Trump's plan to slash taxes for the rich at the expense of average Americans. This morning, House Republicans did their part and passed a budget framework. Senate and House Republicans will now get together and figure out how they will cut federal programs to pay for a $3.8 trillion tax cut for the very wealthy in our nation and a $520 billion boost in spending for immigration, energy, and defense. Former Congressman Carlos Curbelo is back with me still, and joining us is Faz Shakur, Executive Director of the nonprofit A More Perfect Union. Welcome to the table. So let's just revisit the number here so we can know what we're talking about, because the math, as I said before, it's still maths. You're looking at the House budget framework. Extension of the 2017 tax cuts will increase our debt. We have to spend $3.8 trillion. Additional tax cut are an additional $1.5 trillion. Increased spending, $521 for border defense immigration. Spending cuts, mutual agreement on reducing that $1.5 trillion. The cost is a total of $6.9 trillion over 10 years, gentlemen, and $38 trillion more between 2035 and 55. Faz, I mean, I don't know where the number comes from. I mean, how do you look the country in the eye and say we're going to spend this much more money? We're, oh, by the way, increasing the national debt ceiling by $5 trillion. So you know they're going to spend. You know they're going to spend that.
Just for some perspective, we created. I'm sandwiched here. I will disclose. I was original co-sponsor of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We created $1.5 trillion in deficit spending. I thought back then this is too much. We should do this deficit neutral. The number now is
crazy.
And the tax cuts are spending, right? There's a form of government telling people this is what we choose as our priorities. These tax cuts, if you look at this tax package, if you're in the top 0.1%, that's households of $3.5 million a year. So if you're in that household, you're going to get about a tax cut of $300,000. And you take that amount of money, how much they're going to get, about $300,000 per that small group, and you look at the bottom 60%. That's a group of, let's say, around 95,000 and under, Michael. That's 187 million Americans, about $400. You get $400. So, yeah, they're going to sprinkle you a little penny, and they're going to take it and give it to the wealthy, and what are they going to do in turn? Cut Medicaid in order to pay for it all.
Well, and I think, Michael, that's what's troubling. And look, I think there's a lot in the 2017 bill that both parties would pass in a bipartisan manner, especially the individual rate cuts, the doubling of the child tax credit, the doubling of the standard deduction. But how are you going to pay for it? And when you have $880 billion assigned to a committee that, if they're going to cut energy and commerce in the House, it means they're going to cut Medicaid, right? How are they going to get around that? The president's saying no cuts to Medicaid. Well, I don't know if you can meet the number unless you make cuts to Medicaid. And if you can't meet the number, you know this, the whole bill falls apart, because that's part of the reconciliation process. It's technical, but you have to follow the instructions that are in the resolution.
In addition to the math that you're pointing out in Medicaid, which is correct, I got myself worked up listening to Speaker Johnson, who said, you know, we got young men who are sitting and playing video games, and we gotta cut their Medicaid. And I'm like, do you know, in his own district, there's 38% of people with Medicaid. Yeah. We're going out to David Valadio's district. That's in Central Valley in California. 67+% of people with Medicaid. Do you know? They're working at Tesla, they're working at Walmart, they're working at McDonald's, they're working at Dollar General. They're working to try to get by. They're on Medicaid. But here comes, so the math is correct. You can't pay for this. And you're taking it away from people who are desperately just trying to get by. And it's an obscenity. It's a moral obscenity that you would give tax cuts to the rich while taking it away from people. And young men are not, you know, they're not like, oh, I want to go to the doctor. Like, I just want to get Medicaid. That'd be awesome. I just want to sit here and tool around and play video games and get Medicaid. That's not the way human behavior works.
Well, and you know, to be blunt about it, I'm just so done with the bull stereotyping, of individuals, whether it's, a mom, taking advantage of the system, or a young man sitting there just playing video games, collecting a check, or the insane thinking that, people, they wake up in the morning and all they want to be today is poor and leech off the system. I've not run into that American, and I've been on this planet a little while, and I've been around this country, as you know, as you have as well. What is it about that aspect of all of this that we just can't be honest and call the thing what it is? That we would much rather feather the cap of the wealthiest individuals who have that wealth already, and you're just making them richer, as opposed to doing what the party says it's trying to do or wants to be, a party of the working man and woman. You talked, Faz, about the $400 and that 2017 tax cut. I know folks in Prince George's County, Maryland, who saw $50 a week increase in their pay period in their paycheck. $50. So, I mean, what is it about this fixation? If we want to get a working community working again, instead of demonizing them, give them the tax cut.
It's
maybe don't need Social Security if you give them a tax cut.
we're living at a time where this new Republican Party is appealing to working classes on cultural issues, but economically it is still more supply side, more geared toward tax cuts for everyone, including the wealthy. And then you have the Democratic Party, which culturally I think is appealing to wealthier people, right? College-educated people. We're seeing the numbers. Democrats are gaining college-educated voters, but they still have an economic message that is for the working classes. So, these wires seem to be crossed here, and I don't know if you have any ideas as to how this will all get sorted out.
Get the last word on this.
If you look at Trump's policies, they don't know what problem they're trying to solve. Right now, the problem is not that wealthy people are struggling in this economy, that businesses can't create capital. Those are doing fine. I mean, that's what he inherited from President Biden. Economy that was working quite well, but what we needed to do was people who are struggling to deal with housing, struggling to deal with childcare, finding it that, as elderly parents age, trying to take care of them. Those are the kinds of things that are more dealing with middle-class pocketbooks than ever before. Just owning a car and owning a house. And that, to my mind, is what you got to solve for. How are you going to put people in a position to get by on their daily lives? And I would hope if we can focus on that, we could deliver policies. And to your point, Michael, we could talk about tax cuts, we could talk about incentives, better jobs, better wages, but it ain't going to be tax cuts for the rich and cutting Medicaid.